Hi. So, this is, I think I'm doing it a bit earlier this year, but this is my look back at 2024 and a slight little look forward to 2025. So, I'm going to give my faves and my not so faves of 2024 in comics. So, what I'm going to look at first is my top 10, and I'm organised this time. I've got a pad. I'm going to look at my top 10 favourite comics. It's not going to be in any order, it's just going to be the 10 that have really left an impact. Quite a few of them are quite recent ones as well. It's been such a good year that I'm going to first of all give out some honourable mentions. So, start with the honourable mentions first. So, we have One Hand, Six Fingers, the duo two miniseries that came out in tandem by Ram V and Dan Watters. Fantastic, futuristic noir, which would have been in my top 10, but like I said, there's just so much good stuff that's come out, especially in the past few months. So this is an honourable mention, and I do recommend getting the collector's edition, what came out a few weeks ago. And then we've got Absolute Batman. Wow. Absolutely loved Absolute Batman. And yeah, they've reinvented the wheel. I did not know how they were going to do an absolute version of Batman. Because, I mean, what can you do? But they've shown what you can do. The artwork is dynamic. The panel layouts are amazing. And Scott Snyder's not resting on his laurels. He's not trying to just replicate the kind of Batman vibe he had with his long run with Greg Capullo. This is a completely fresh take on Batman, and I'm all in for it. And then we have, to give a bit of love to Marvel, Uncanny X-Men by Gail Simone and David Marquez. Ish. I think it could end up being that, like with X-Men, he's going to just end up doing some type issues, and then it'll be another artist, whoever, doing all the majority of the work. I'm really enjoying it. Gail Simone's really got a nice voice for the X-Men, but the reason it's not in my top 10, crossovers. They've already had one crossover, what we're currently going through. Then there's going to be another crossover in March. Marvel, that's going to be one of my gripes later on. And then later on in the year, there's going to be an even, I think it's called X-Men versus X-Men. So that's why it doesn't come in my top 10. But it's a lovely X-Men title. And then we've got Ram V's Majestic Run, which wraps up this year on Detective Comics. Just glorious. It will definitely end up being one of the evergreen Batman runs. And then we have from Distillery, got to give love out to Distillery, Spectrograph. I think it's 2 or 3 issues deep. There's one more issue to go, which I've just not picked up yet, by Christian Ward and James Tynion IV. Wow, this is how you do a modern haunted house story. But the thing that I found more horrific wasn't the threat of the ghost or anything like that. It's that she's left her baby unattended at home while she's stuck in this house with ghosts. And it's still fucking praise on my mind. Even though I read the first issue months ago, I'm still thinking about it. And it's driving me mad. And that's the sign of a good comic, that it can worm its way into being that much. I need to know how it's resolved. And then another one that would have been on my top 10 because it's fantastic, but it was fantastic before this series came out as well, because it had the same team. Hellblazer by Cy Spurrier, and I've forgotten the artist's name. Tell me in the comments, I just can't have blanked. But great run, which has wrapped up this week. And then another fantastic comic, but I've just got to give it to another one in the same creative universe for my top 10, and that's Rook Exodus by Jeff Johns and Jason Fabok. Beautiful artwork, quite possibly one of the nicest looking books on the stands, and it's a really fun adventure comic, and I'm all for it. So those are my honourable mentions. Now let's get on to the top 10. Like I said, these aren't in any order, but one comic that has blown me away, just one issue left to go, Grommets by Rick Remender, Brian Posehn and Brett Parson, and colours by Marino Donacio. Wow. This could have just ended up being like nostalgic shades, rose-tinted shades, a look back at American youth in the 80s in skate culture. It's ended up being so much more. Yeah, first few issues had loads of laughs and self-referential nods to 80s culture, but it's gone so much deeper, so much darker. and it works all the better for it. It's John Hughes by way of by way of Richard Linklater. So it's got the initial breeziness of John Hughes, the teen angst, and then you've got the rug being pulled up from under you by like Richard Linklater did with some of his films. Just a masterpiece, absolutely wonderful comic. If you've not been buying it, get the trade when it comes out. A regular 10 out of 10. And then another comic that's blown me away, and more people should be buying this. I adore this comic, and this is Dick Tracy by Segura, Moretti, Borges, Osman, Englert, and Campbell. That's the creative team. Dick Tracy is a perfect blueprint of how to do a well-known character, well-known franchise, and to give it a fresh boost of life without losing what makes it so unique. This is Dick Tracy for the modern era, but it's a die-hard noirish thriller. He's still got his yellow Mac, he's still got his contraption on his wrist, his phone, watch, you name it, walkie-talkie, but it's got the substance and the depth of something like a Brian De Palma Goodfellas film, and it's just great. Yeah, no, yeah, what's it? No, it wasn't Goodfellas. What was it called? Untouchables. Sorry, feels like the Untouchables. That kind of, it's got that kind of vibe, and it is wonderful. Again, another 10 out of 10. The trade has come out the first 5 issues, so do buy it. You will not be disappointed. This is Mandy's biggest seal of approval. I adore this comic. And another one that blew me away, and this one of the creators is going to get a bit of love later on as well. And this is Absolute Wonder Woman. Wow. Absolute Batman, brilliant. But Absolute Wonder Woman raised it up even more. Kelly Thompson has done something to Wonder Woman that makes her vibrant, makes her a bit messy, and all the better for it. And I don't know, she just feels much more relatable than the normal standard Wonder Woman. And the art by Hayden Sherman is just fantastic. They have such a grasp for layouts, and I need to apologise for my last review of Batman Dark Patterns because I misgendered them, and I do apologise for that. As somebody who's trans, I should know better. But they're just fantastic. They're such a talent. Like I said, what they did with Batman Dark Patterns was amazing. And again, Dark Patterns is stylistically so different art-wise to the art style that they choose to use on Wonder Woman. But they still play with the layouts, what you can do with the shape of a layout, how there's pictures within pictures. It is just wonderful. It's a joy to read, and it's only 2 issues deep so far. But I feel like I've been reading it for a long time. That's a good sign. And Kelly Thompson is on the top of her game with her writing in this. Another 10 out of 10. And another comic that... These are all going to be 10 out of 10, so I don't need to keep saying it. But another one that more people should be reading. And it upsets me that people aren't trying it. You need to get on this. Feral. This... That cover is just wonderful. This is Watership Down meets The Walking Dead. It is just jaw-droppingly unique, jaw-droppingly nuanced, to pinch the word off Robbie from Pop Culture Philosophers, and it's just got a heart to it, and you fall in love with these characters, which are just cats. But these are not like a Disney type of cat. These are just raggedy everyday cats who have got this threat of this virus going around, what basically turned cats rabid, but it's like a zombie invasion. But they've sort of got to contend with that, but then they've got to contend with the even bigger threat, which is mankind. And it doesn't pull its punches, put it that way. But it doesn't make it go, ooh, there's a hell of a lot of heart in this comic. And it's one of the most unique, interesting reads of the past year. And again, 10 out of 10. And next up, Conan the Barbarian by Jim Zub and his various art teams. One of them being De La Torre, then you've got Dougie Braithwaite, and the current one is Brian. But I want to give out a shout out to this, but also to the sister title, the big, thick, black and white magazine, Savage Sword of Conan. Both of them knocking it out of the park. I've always liked Conan, but I got very disenchanted with how he's been treated in comics for the past 20 years or so. I kind of enjoyed Dark Horse, but the Dark Horse ones were very, very dry. They were just straight-laced adaptations. There was no spontaneity to it. There was no energy to the artwork. They were pretty to look at, but that was just it. There was just too much concentration on making it faithful. Whereas Jim Zub gets to the heart of Conan, but he doesn't doggedly adhere to how Conan should be in the books. He gives it the fine blend of a classic Marvel Conan from the 70s, but updates it for the modern times, throws in some adult content, and brings in the energy from the books as well. And this is why it's just brilliant. It's fantastic. And a more recent comic, but one that is blowing me away. I want to give a shout out to one of. I'm going to add him onto my writers actually. Just bear with me 1 second. There we go. A little bit of an update. So I forgot about this, but Batman and Robin Year One by Mark Waid, who's having a year this year. He's doing so many great projects, but not just Mark Waid, but Chris Samney doing Batman. Chris Samney did a wonderful run on Daredevil with Mark Waid, but for the past few years he's been doing Backtober on Instagram, where he's been posting little short illustrations of Batman. He was born to illustrate Batman, and this strip, by the way, this cover is one of my favourite covers of the year. I love the salmon background. It just draws your eyes into the figures, and the building work in the background is just majestic. But he was born to draw Batman, and this comic has so much heart by Mark Waid. It's got this wonderful retro flavour, but it's not as heavily retro as World's Finest. It's got a modern sensibility in the storytelling, and it just shows this wonderful, it explores this relationship between Dick Grayson and Batman in the initial year they were together. And it does normally it paints Batman as gruff, but this illustrates Dick Grayson very, very well as this reckless acrobat who basically nearly every day gives Bruce Wayne a heart attack because he doesn't know what he's going to do next. It's a joy to read, and again, it's only 2 issues deep so far. I think the third issue's just come out, but I've not picked up a lot of my comics over Christmas. I'll get them in a few weeks. So do get this comic. And another one that's sort of come out recently. This is what I'm saying. The DC initiative of All In and the Absolutes has just made me scrap what I was going to do for my top 10 for this year, because they've just been shooting so many hits at the moment. And another one by Jeff Lemire and Olateguru on the artwork. It's JSA. I adore the JSA. I feel very sad when there's no JSA comic. I did not want to Jeff Johns' recent JSA comic. It just felt very heavy, very burdened with so much history, and this has got ties to that, ties to this, got ties to that. Jeff Lemire's just done away with all that, and he's just brought in both teams, modern and the old, and they've got this ongoing parallel mystery that's going on, and it sucks you in brilliantly. I don't know if it's reader-friendly people who aren't familiar with JSA, but for me as a die-hard JSA fan, it's ticking all my boxes, and I love it. And another one I love, but I've not got a fucking clue what's going on with it, but it's not criticism. Some of my favourite things are very obscure. Paranoid Gardens by Gerard Way, Sean Simon, both of them double acting as the writers, and beautiful artwork by Chris Weston with gorgeous colours by Dave Stewart. Paranoid Gardens is the closest thing you'll get to a pure Vertigo comic this year, even more so than Distillery. Gerard Way is channeling the life essence of Grant Morrison without it feeling like a Grant Morrison book. He's definitely put his own stamp now on how to do almost like Dada-esque surreal superheroes, surreal flights of fancy, and that's what this is. There's no explanation. He just throws it at you and you soak it in. It's very, very reminiscent of the vibe you get from watching the Twin Peaks 12 episode limited series that was out a few years back. It's that kind of thing where you didn't really care that there was no real structure to it. There was no real resolution to the plot points. You just soak it in. It's a trip and a half, and Chris Weston is doing some of the best artwork of his career. Just wonderful. And then we have one from Ghostworld. Like I said, Rook X's was amazing, but this for me is my favourite Ghostworld title of the year. This is Hyde Street by Jeff Johns and Ivan Reis, who's doing some fucking beautiful artwork. This is Ghost World's horror comic. It's very Twilight Zone-ish. Got a really cool kind of like sinister hip vibe to it, and I adore it. It's just wonderful. And lastly, this only came out this week, so this just straight into the end of the year, and it's a comic I've been waiting a long time for. I actually said, I don't know if Ram V heard me, but on Twitter about 3 years ago, I said I would love for Ram V to do New Gods. Lo and behold, Ram V is writing New Gods. I used to chat with him on Twitter, I was quite pleased with that. And it's got gorgeous artwork by Evan Cagle. And on the first issue, Jorge Fornes does the first 4 issues, the opening sequence. This is everything I want from New Gods. New Gods is my jam. I adore The Fourth World by Jack Kirby. And this stands on the shoulders of the giant that is Jack Kirby, and then does a pirouette, somersault, and lands somewhere else, and creates something very unique. It's its own beast without losing the history what Jack Kirby has already planted in place. Buy this comic. It's only just come out. It is going to sell out if you don't buy it soon. It is going to cause a ripple effect across the DC universe as well. It is meant to be quite a linchpin title because it delves into the mystery of the disappearance or the dissolution of Darkseid and what that effect that has on New Gods, but not just New Gods, but the normal DC universe and also the Absolute universe. So it is an essential read. So that is the top 10 titles. So what I'm going to tell you about now are my top five. What's 5? My top 5 comic publishers. So first out of the gate, it's not DC, it's not Image, it's Distillery. I just love the whole format of the Distillery books. Yes, they're $8.99, but you're buying a 48-page, perfect bound, big magazine size, like 2000 AD size, European style graphic album. It's not a comic, it is a graphic album. I've said this before, I'm getting like a stuck record. In France, in Belgium and other places, this is how they release their graphic albums. It's 48-page formats, roughly the same price. And you just collect like that and they go on your bookshelf like mine do. They're not a comic, they're a graphic album. And it's my dream formats. I've enjoyed every story. They've not had a clunker of a story yet. And yeah, I'm invested all the way. If it means sacrificing some of the more standard sized comics, I'll do that, because I'd rather pay $8.99 for something like that than $9.99 for, hey, this is our anniversary issue, let's just have a load of backup strips. Fuck off. So that is my favourite company. And next up we have DC. They are just knocking it out of the gate this year. They've had out of the park even with their initiatives with how they're doing the graphic novels, which we'll come to later, and also with the All In. What I admire about DC is how they had this plan for 5 years, and they stuck to the guns, and they underplayed it. They just said, we've got something going on, because I fell out with DC a few years back, thinking, oh, they're not going to get it back. And I just like how they never said, oh, we're going to do something fantastic, trust us. They just kept it close to the chest, and then they said, here you go. And it's not stopped. They're still throwing out great stuff. In 2025, they've got some really good series already on the docket already to come out in January, February and March. They're not sitting back on their laurels, and another company could learn a lot from them, but they're not. It's like they're just going, I don't care, we'll just do the same old. And it's just amazing. Like I said, but they're also doing it with the graphic novels. The price point for the DC finest ones, the thick, chunky 600-page version of their version of the Epic collections, is $10 cheaper, if not more, than Marvel's, and double the size and thickness. Why can't Marvel do this? So DC are honouring the custom that they get from the fan base. They're saying, look, we respect you, so we're going to do this at a fair price point. Talking about price points, and we'll mention it more in depth later, is the DC Compact Lines. $9.99 for a 300-page book. Fantastic. So yeah, DC get my love this year. And of course you've got the Absolutes and the All-Ins, and just amazing. And next up, from Image, the Ghost Machine universe. Just brilliant. There's not one bad issue from that universe. The only one I didn't pick up was Devour, because It got reviewed so much before I even found it available. Like, it ruined a story for me. So I thought, I don't need to buy it now. It really did. I knew everything that was going on in the comic. So I just buy it. But apart from that, Ghost Machine, I've got perfect teams, perfect price points, cardstock covers, thick paper quality, and the stories are normally 22, 24, 26 pages sometimes. The only one that isn't is Geiger. So yeah, they're just doing everything right. And there's not really any gaps. They're having a break for Rook, but I'd rather have that. But they're up front about saying, look, doing 6 issues a year, fine. That's how you do a comic company. And then I've got to give a shout out to the big love of my comic life, Rebellion / 2000 AD. 2000 AD has not sat back in its laurels for a long time. Since Rebellion took it over, they've pushed it into new areas. They're bringing out some of the most exciting collections with the Treasure of British Comics, where they bring out deluxe packages of old comics that have been lost in the mist of time. So you're being reintroduced to stories from Lion comic strip, from Valiant, from Battle, from 2000 AD, you name it, and they're coming out in really gorgeous packages. And they're also doing wonderful things with 2000 AD and Judge Dredd magazine. But not just that, they also do things like the Battle Action picture. They're doing a 10-issue Battle Action strip week monthly comic, which is just amazing, very high quality, with the cream of the crop in talent doing them. And they're just not aping the old style of the strips that they're honouring. They bring fresh blood and fresh dynamism into it, and for that, just wonderful. And the final one I want to give a shout out to is one that's not they're normally associated with doing graphic novel collections and things like that. It's Titan, and basically for what they're doing with what they're doing with Conan and the Robert E. Howard universe, just wonderful. They're also doing some really interesting stuff with Pulp Fiction, like with the Gun Honey series. They've reintroduced a new fan base to Elric. They're just clutching on these quality bits. They're not bloating. They're not becoming bloated. They're just saying, get this, and we'll do it to the best of our ability. And that is how you do it correctly. You do it right. You don't oversaturate what you've got. You keep it tiny, but you keep it high quality, and you keep it varied within that small community. And they're also branching out into manga. They're just on fire at the moment. So, talking about graphic novels and publishers, etc., I'm going to show my top 3 collected editions of the year. One that I should talk about, it's not a particular title. This one is a format. It's DC Comics, compact format. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of them at the moment, and I won't stop buying them because I've got another batch of 12, I think, coming out next year. $9.99, very easy to read. I thought, I'm going to struggle with this, but it's piss easy to read in this size. So they're competing with the manga market, and what's really encouraging to hear is they're not just selling out in your comic shops, these are selling out in bookshops as well. These are competing with manga books. Why can't other people learn from that, other publishers? And quite possibly my favourite graphic novel collected edition of the year, in format, in presentation, in price point, Slain the Horned God by Simon Bisley. This is a beast of a book. When I did my video of this, I think I clunked myself on the head with it. It's that big and heavy. This is gorgeous. This is how you want to read Simon Bisley's artwork. It's big, it's brutal, it's bombastic, and it's beautiful. And yeah, it's deserving of the graphic novel collected edition of the year. There's a hardback as well back on the fourth that. And the next up is the Nemesis Definitive Edition. I adore Nemesis. I had this in the Deviant edition, which was the colourised versions from Eagle, but this is how you want it. Slightly oversized in the original way it's meant to be done, black and white. And it's got everything, and even the covers that he appears on. Really beautiful presentation. They're bringing it out sequentially. I've got Volumes 1 and 2. Number 3 is coming out in March, I think, next year. And I highly recommend getting this. They're bringing out Slain, the rest of the Slain series, in this format as well. And I recommend the 2000 AD Essential Collections, which are the same kind of format. Just a wonderful, wonderful, high quality, yet affordable price point for collecting the complete versions or complete runs of your favourite 2000 AD characters. So there we go. Not much to go now, I don't think. Yep, nearly finished. So next up, I want to focus on my top 5 artists. Again, in no particular favourite order of favourites. First up, of course, person who he's the Neil Adams of his generation, Dan Morrow. I don't think even you can tell when he's sometimes done a rushed issue, but his rushed work is leagues ahead of a lot of people's work, what they labour over for months and months and months, and they just do like 1 issue a year. He's doing 2 comics a month. How? The man is a machine, and his artwork is gorgeous. And another person who I adore, as I mentioned previously, they are doing fantastic work with Dark Patterns and Absolute Wonder Woman. They've done the Unbeing for Dark Horse. They did some really good series out with IDW with Scott Snyder, and it's Hayden Sherman. They are a talent who are going to get to such a peak eventually. They're going to be one of the names. They're already getting there, but they've done it they don't do it by hyping themselves up. They don't do it by jumping on the biggest title. They do it by graft and by putting the work out there and experimenting. And the experimentation is working for them, and they are just phenomenal. And then talk about phenomenal, Jason Fabok, who kind of disappeared for a bit, and now we realise why. Rook Exodus. He's poured his blood and guts into this strip. You can each page drips with detail. When it does a pan back shot of the environment where these characters live, you see so much more going on. There's little bits like where you look in the corner, you see some action going on. He's just a master craftsman like the other 2 that I've mentioned. And then Chris Samney, he's the Alex Toth of his generation. He's picked up the baton that was unfortunately dropped by Darwin Cook by his sad passing, and he is the new Darwin Cook and Alex Toth. He can make his use of lighter shades is unparalleled, I think, compared to anybody else who's currently around at the moment. The last artist who had me excited, apart from Darwin Cook, who had me as excited with his art style, in that kind of style, was Steve Rude. So he's in really good company. He is a fantastic craftsman. And then talk about fantastic craftsmen. One of the artists who I followed from his early days on 2008 all the way through to now with Dark Horse, Chris Weston. He is the new Brian Bolland, but he's Brian Bolland who can do a comic. Brian Bolland's wonderful. I adore Brian Bolland, but he's slow as fuck. Chris Weston has the same amount of detail, but he gets it out. He gets the comics out. I don't look. Yeah, you can be a gorgeous artist, but if all you're doing is covers, I don't buy a comic for covers. I'm not a cover queen. I don't get all the hundreds of variants. I get one comic, one cover. I want the meat that's inside, and he provides the meat. What the hell am I talking about? Then we have the top 5 writers. Obviously, Ram V's going to be there. I adore Ram V. I'm verging on like stalker activity with Ram V, and it's worrying me. And I'm sure it's worrying him. But Ram V is just a genius. And then we have Jeff Lemire. Wow, what a few years he's had. The work he's doing for Image has just been amazing. The work he's doing with Dark Horse with Black Hammer is fantastic. And the series he did where it's about the loss of a child. And also his superhero stuff now with JSA, wonderful. And he's doing Absolute Flash. He is on fire. He's just wonderful. Jeff Johns, who knew he could write stuff that wasn't DC? And when he's been freed of the shackles of just doing corporate gigs, his imagination has excelled even more. He's always been a great writer, but on his own creations, you can tell because it's his property and he loves it. He's putting that extra 10% in, and it's paying off. And then we have James Tynion IV, the guy, another machine, and especially when he's on horror, like I said, Spectrograph. That got me big style. Then you've got Something Is Killing the Children. You've got is it Nice House by the Sea, whatever it's called, the sequel to Nice House by the Lake, whatever that was called. And of course you've got his new Distillery one, which came out a few weeks back, which is just wonderful. So James Tynion, and Department of Truth. The guy is writing so much stuff, but even with the amount of volume even with the even with the volume of comics that he's doing, there's no dip in quality. Just fantastic. Talk about no dip in quality with the amount of comics that I'm doing. Mark Waid. This has been past 2 years have been Mark Waid's renaissance. You've got World's Finest. You've got Batman and Robin Year One. You've got Justice League Unlimited. You've got Absolute Power. There's more and more. There's the Black Label Superman comic. What's coming back in March. This has been the best he's ever been. It proves that age is no limit to what you can do creatively. With comics, they tend to hang writers and artists out to dry after a while. And the younger comic readers can get quite horrible about people. They can get quite horrible about Jim Lee, about John Robinson Jr., about people like Marv Wolfman, just because they've never experienced them in the heyday. And I don't like, that's the one thing I hate about comic fandom. It can be quite toxic just through ignorance, like with anything, I guess. And my fringe is driving me mad. So those are my top 5 writers. Now we're moving on to my biggest letdowns. So let's just start off by saying one word, and I'm sure this won't surprise you. Marvel. Marvel has been the biggest letdown of the year. Yet they've got a few little gems glistening in the big shiny turd that is Marvel. The Ultimate line on the whole is amazing, but it's not as captivating as Absolute. I find it quite cold and clinical. Ultimate Spider-Man, what's meant to be the warm and cozy Peter Parker in his 30s, it's an exercise in how to be ponderous. Ultimate X-Men, it's good, but for a monthly comic, it's very slow paced. The Ultimates, I don't know. I've never read it, and I'm going to get it on Collector's Edition. And I know Dennis Camp is doing some wonderful things on that. But that's what I'm saying. They're good, but they're just like Ultimate Black Panther, which I think gets overlooked by everybody now. So there's little bits of Marvel that are still good. Like I said, Ultimates on the whole is good. It's great. But then Marvel do things like weird price points. They bring out 40-page comics for $5.99, whereas DC or somebody else would do that for $4.99. They don't give any mercy to the fans. So they put pages with adverts which ruin the structure of a story. They overcharge, the paper quality is rubbish, they don't try new formats, they don't do any prestiges, they don't do anything what just makes it a bit more exciting. They've got rid of their lines of variety, so they've got rid of Icon, they've got rid of Marvel Knights, they've got rid of Marvel Max. They had one Marvel Max comic this year and that's it, it's disappeared again. And what the fuck is that red band? Marvel Max had